Welcome back. Today, as I said in the last broadcast, we're going to talk about some I would call political things or things happening in the world and look at them spiritually, not in terms of the categories we've been taught to look at the world. As we said in earlier broadcasts, when we ate from the tree, when Adam and Eve ate from the tree and took on the nature of the room, their eyes were opened and they saw things categorically. They didn't see things relationally. Prior to that time, they walked in the garden and they knew what the plants were and all that. I'm not saying they didn't know what anything was, but they knew things relationally. After their eyes were open, they knew things in terms of good and evil, categorically, not relationally. And so that changes everything, because at that point, what does the scripture say? It says they were afraid and they hid themselves. Okay, so when our eyes are open and we see that we must navigate a world that we don't know very well, and we have to make decisions about, should I do this? Should I do that? What if I do this? What if, it falls apart? We look at the world in cause effect. Our decisions have effects that could affect us negatively or positively. And so that changes everything. That changes everything, the way we look at the world. And the evil one, Lucifer, knows that. And that's why he's going to get us to look at things not relationally, not spiritually, but categorically. That's how he's going to get us to look at things. Got up on the board, xenophobia is actually how it's pronounced, is more than a black-white issue. Now, I don't know how many of you know what the word xenophobia means, but it comes from the Greek. You probably know what phobia is. It's fear, like acrophobia, fear of heights. There's all kinds of phobias, and phobias of snakes, phobias of, everything, phobias of people. And I don't know all the terms for them, but you go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, counselor, they're going to say, "Oh, you have this fear," because it's normally an unnatural fear. It becomes something really extreme. But we need to talk about xenophobia, because xenophobia is this. Xenophobia is the fear of what is strange. Now, it can mean fear of other cultures, fear of skin tones, people that are different from you, but it can mean more than that. It can mean that you're fearful of anything you don't understand. And if you've adopted categories to look at the world, those people who have adopted other categories to look at the world become a threat to you. In fact, the Greeks were highly xenophobic. Anybody strange came into their culture, they got rid of them as quick as they could, until they were conquered by the Romans, and then basically they had to merge their culture with Rome. So xenophobia is more than a black-white issue. It used to come up all the time in our culture as black-white issues, like the blacks are against the whites are against the black, because look, and it's very obvious because blacks have dark skin, whites have white skin. And so that created right there a kind of a xenophobic attitude. It wasn't necessarily racism, because you don't know. How can you know what another culture's like? Maybe they're hostile to you. So this whole thing that Satan uses is he plays upon these fears. And he's going to create other categories, the way we look at the world, and others that he's going to use to actually make us work for him. keep us enslaved to our thoughts rather than enter into a relationship with God and other people that's not based upon fear. He doesn't want that, because as soon as you don't fear your neighbor, as soon as you don't fear other cultures, as soon as you don't fear black people or white people, he has no power to divide. See, he came to, it says, he came to kill and destroy. Well, what's killing? It's separating. So he operates in this world about separating nations, separating peoples. Now, I'm not an advocate of the United Nations bringing people together. Don't go there, because they have no power to bring these people together, because it's based again upon categories and ideas, and those eventually divide. That's why in the scripture, when it talks about the whole world coming together, what does it lead to? It leads to a war, because that United Nations, that world system that draws people together, has no power to keep people together. So let's go on. Xenophobia, is more than a black-white issue. Think of the words capitalism, communism, Democrat versus Republic, Protestant versus Catholic, and on and on and on. We could come up with all these categories, because that's the way we look at the world. Hot, cold. Oh, the water's too hot, I'll burn my hands. Oh, it's too cold. I can't go swimming, the water's too cold. See, we look at the world that way. And since the fall, what we call the fall, we look at the word categorically. And we try to order the categories based upon what pleases us and what doesn't please us. So we, in essence, become gods. We start to look at the world and say, well, this is no good for me, therefore I'm not going to allow it in anybody. This is who I am. Think of the transgender. This is who I am. Well, I'm going to say this. I think they're wrong, but I'm going to say this. Okay, go ahead and be what you think you are. But see, that's not good enough, because eventually it becomes people who are on the fringe want that to become the norm. And Rollins, who wrote the Harry Potter series, came out and she linked it to her book. And I haven't read the book, but there's the Death Eaters, I guess, in the book. And they lived in the shadows, like a lot of the trans community and all of this. So they lived in the shadows. And when they came out of the shadows, they said, now we're going to kill the ones who held us down, see. And so you see, now that we're getting off the topic a little bit, but it's really part of the topic. So you start to see a concerted effort to change others to believe as you do, and it all relates back to xenophobia. I'm fearful of you because you don't agree with me, so I got to change your mind. And if I can't change your mind, what the Greeks would do is we would just kill you. They would just kill you. They would conquer you, and if you didn't go along with what they believed, they would just wipe you out. And so xenophobia is a big deal, because we tend to try to get rid of everything we're not comfortable with. So let's look at capitalism versus communism. Now, in America, as I said before, we've been taught that capitalism is good. Now, interestingly, I've been talking to a few people not from America who grew up or were part of a communistic system. And I'm not telling you that they're going to come out and say, oh, communism was terrible or whatever. They're not. They're actually moved over here. But they believe capitalism's bad. Not because communism's good, but because capitalism tends to what? It tends to concentrate wealth and power in a few hands, like we're experiencing with the big tech companies. how they manipulated popular opinion. It's coming out. Like the people in Washington who released these tapes about all this footage that happened on January 6th, when supposedly there was this big insurrection. What are we seeing? They're the police are inviting people into the Capitol. They're not breaking in. There's got some videos of people in black that were faces were covered, not like the people that were at the Capitol that they invited in. They weren't wearing masks. They were going in. So see, this fear of things different than what we believe is true is a big, powerful thing. And the people in charge, who I believe a lot of times are connected to the Luciferian Empire, they will try to use our fears and our categories to manipulate us. And just another word on communism. Communism was a communal understanding that all resources belong to the whole, and that the resources should be used for the whole, so that people without shoes would have shoes, people without shirts would have, people without food would have food. See, it's amazing that the people at the top who are trying to get us all to sacrifice, fly around in jets, live in mansions, they have places on the coast, they have places in the city. See, they're not living communally. They're living in segregated communities. But the early church, who had some rich people in it, practiced communal understanding of property. It says in Acts that those who had sold what they had to give to the poor. They wanted to make sure everybody's basic needs were taken care of. Now, there's some caveats to that where capitalism comes in. That doesn't mean that if somebody was a sluggard who just didn't want to work, didn't mean that they said, oh, come in, we'll feed you and we'll take care of you and don't ever have to work a day in your life. No, because again, it was relational. They looked at the person and said, this guy really needs help. He's really trying. This one here isn't trying at all. Why should we spend our communal assets to help this person who's not even trying, and in many ways is hostile to us? Why would we do that? Yeah, we do that all the time in America, because we're being manipulated to look at the world in these categories. The people in charge are manipulating us. And they're manipulating us, as we're going to see, to build a kingdom for Lucifer. That's where the Antichrist comes in. That's when the tribulation, all of these things we could talk about. But I'm more driven right now to get people to see that they're in what I'm going to say, it's a spiritual war, witnessed here on earth. It's what it says in Ephesians. We don't wrestle against flesh and blood. The flesh and blood is spiritually driven. Our true war is against these entities in the high places that establish this hierarchy, that use xenophobia, use the Achilles heel to manipulate us. Democrat versus Republican. Okay, that's another category they use. Well, what is Democrat? Well, it comes from a Greek word, and it means rule by the people. So it normally comes down to this idea that we'll just take a vote on everything. And so if we decide, are we going to build a new park in our community, we'll just take a communal vote, a vote of the community, and if the majority of people say, yes, we'll pay for a park, then we'll build the park. If a majority of the people say, we don't want a park, we don't want to spend money on a park, we got more pressing issues, we won't build a park. Okay. Now, in theory, that sounds real good. But what happens if it comes down to deciding whether or not a group of people will be enslaved, like in Germany? See, Hitler had the bulk of the people, the majority of the people. He could hold elections because he had the minds of the people through these categories, and he had the control of them. So he could say, "We'll leave it up to you. The Jews are scum. They're the ones that did this to you." Sounds familiar here? Oh, all the white people did this to you. All the black people did this. No, that's absurd. But Hitler was able to say all the Jews did this to you. So let's take a vote. Are you going to vote for me because I'm going to go after them, get you reparations, eventually put them to death to purify the race? Well, the majority of people accepted that. So do you really want a pure democracy where the majority of people, if they hate the differences in you, can put you to death? Does that even make sense? This is nonsense that, oh, we need to go to places to defend democracy. Why? First of all, what business do we have in all these other parts of the world? What business do we, as Americans, what business do we have of that? But see, we've been manipulated in believing we're fighting for democracy because we have a distorted view of democracy. So let's look at republicanism. What is a republic? Well, again, it's a representation form of government. It's actually the form of government we have, but they've manipulated this too. And I'm not saying republic, because when Jesus comes back, he's not setting up a republic or a democracy. So right off the bat, we should be susceptible. We should be skeptical of these categories that are pushed on us. If you really are relationally connected to Jesus, you should be skeptical of them. You should know you're in a war. See, this is a big deal. So what about this? Well, what's a republic? Well, representative government. The founding fathers didn't establish a republican government without, first of all, establishing a Bill of Rights that they said these were the rights of the people that were ordained by God. And they held these rights, what we call civil rights, to be that they couldn't be violated by government. So the republic, or the representative government that's put there by the vote or the democratic vote, was held in check by these inalienable rights that couldn't be taken away from. Well, the founding fathers also knew that that wasn't going to last forever because people were basically xenophobic. They were fear of outsiders, and they knew outsiders were going to come to the country, that we could be manipulated because of our fears. And they also knew that people were self-interested. Okay, go back to the communal thing. Yeah, we want to help people that are trying to help themselves, but we're not necessarily, we want to, kind of push people that just want to be taken care of. See, we want, there's a certain value to self-interest, but self-interest can what? It can lead to greed, can lead to corruption, can lead to all kinds of evil things. So this idea of self-interest or capitalism or markets need to be held in check if it's going to produce any good result, just like this government needs to be held in check by inalienable rights. Once those things fly out the window and we can be manipulated through the schools, through the churches, through the media and all of that, game's over. They have us. The Luciferian system has us. They have us, and we start fighting. We'll go to war because, these people aren't Democrat. These people, yeah, like it's such a wonderful deal here right now. We got to fight for the Republic. What, against a country in Vietnam Why did we fight the Vietnam War? Why did we fight the Korean War? Why did we go to war against Iraq? Why did we do all of these things? Let's start looking at that and do some research on it. And I think if you do some research, and you can't go to CNN or the things Google gives you the first search on because they're trying to manipulate you too. But if you look at it, there's some nefarious things that were going on. Remember George Bush saying, oh, we got to go into Iraq because they have weapons of mass destruction. Were there any weapons of mass destruction? Oh, we've got to go in to Iraq because, look, Islam just hit our towers. You're going to start to see some things that are already coming out about what actually happened on 9/11. For example, look at George Bush when he's announced that the planes hit the towers. He's sitting there and he's supposed to be reading a book that was given to him. But guess what? The book's upside down. It's all staged to try to manipulate us into going to war for very nefarious reasons. Protestantism versus Catholic. Okay. I know a lot of very devout Catholics who have a relationship with Jesus. I know a lot of Catholics that don't have a relationship with Jesus. They no more know Jesus than they know the guy 10 streets away from them. They know the form of godliness, but they don't know the power, which is Jesus personally. But guess what? When it comes to Protestants, same thing. But yet, what Lucifer's done is been able to get us to focus on the differences in the systems because he knows we're xenophobic. We're fearful of anything that might be different from us because it might hurt us. Might just hurt us. I give this example. I'm walking down the path in the woods one day, and see, I see something move. It's windy, and I see something move, and I see what looks like a snake, and I'm immediately a snake, because my first identification of the problem is wrong. It's not a snake; it's a stick that fell from a tree and moved. But see, I see it, and I categorically, on the ground, something moving, snake. See, when I'm in there, this is what happens here. And I jump back, and I want to run. I've got adrenaline moving in me because here's something that's going to hurt me. I'm fearful of. That's strange or different. And I try to put it in categories, and I'm manipulated by my fears. See, this is what's going on here. But if I step back and I don't let fear, the spirit of fear, move me, according to the old nature, I see the truth. I see it's not a snake, not something that's going to hurt me, but it's a stick. And so, I'm okay. Nothing to fear here. In Jesus, there's nothing to fear. But if you focus on these categories, there's a hell of a lot to fear. Oh, excuse me for using the word hell, but I actually meant it. There's a hell of a lot of things to fear. So, we talked about it's a spiritual war that we see through the flesh until we're spiritually born again. And we can see spiritually rather than through the flesh, the fallen nation categorically. So we're going to end just talking a little bit about Ukraine. And I'm not going to tell you everything that I've heard about Ukraine or that. But let's start with the fact that the Ukraine's been, or that area has been there a long time. In fact, as long as we've known the world, it's been there. And at one time, it was part of the Russian Empire, the USSR, but when the empire broke up and Russia be, became more concerned about Russia rather than its territories, these territories were given some autonomy. Now, guess who? And think about this: the president of the Ukraine, Zelensky. Look it up. He was an actor. In fact, he loved to pose naked and do things naked, like play the guitar. I mean, just a really weird dude. And we're supposed to believe that when the democracy was created in Ukraine by Barack Obama during Barack Obama's term, that somehow all the people in Ukraine who were basically Russian, a lot of them Russian citizens that belonged to the Russian Orthodox Church, said, yeah, that guy who acts, pretends like he's a woman, does these skits naked and all of this crap. Yeah, that's the guy we want. That's the guy we're going to elect by by a vote that is legitimate. Think about that. Does that really make sense? Because that same guy now is trying to outlaw, and is being successful, the Russian Orthodox Church. Think about it. Think about this. Trump would, and I'm not saying Trump's the answer. I'm just trying to expose the idea that we're being manipulated on both sides. Trump would have rallies that tens of thousands of people would come to. Joe Biden couldn't even fill a small auditorium. Yet we're supposed to believe that he got the most votes of any president in the history of the world. Think about it. Does that even make sense? Now, if you're a Bidenite, oh, you're going, oh, but he won't. No, I'm trying to get you to look at it not categorically based upon what you've determined to be good, but spiritually to look at what's going on here. That's what this is about. It's not about trying to convince people to vote for Trump or vote for Biden or any of that. It's to open up eyes, because once your eyes are open, you're going to start to see in your daily relationships with people you're being manipulated too. So this is a lot more important than who wins an election. It's about manipulation. And who's manipulating you? Again, our battle is not against the flesh and blood. Even a lot of the people that are promulgating this, they're being used. I mean, there's some people at the top that know exactly what's going on, but then they compromise the people under them, and they get them to believe in these ideologies versus people versus relationship with Jesus and man. See, when Jesus comes back, first he's going to rule over the nations with an iron rod. But when he creates the new Jerusalem, the new heaven, there won't be any need for the iron rod. Why? Because everybody will be relationally connected, not categorically divided. That's the big deal here. And this is what's happening, and this is why we have to be a lot of people I first thought categorically I had nothing to do with have become my best friends, because I got to know them relationally, not categorically. And I've said this before, it's starting to work, God's starting to work on me when I drive. Because, see, I'm not a great driver, but I'm a fast driver, and I can get any place, and I can avoid accidents. So I'm in line and there's people ahead of me going really, really slow. And I get angry because why can't you get the rules of the road? Don't you know the speed limit here? Don't you know you have to signal? Don't you? And God stopped me one day, and he's working on me on this. He said, look, that's categorical thinking. Don't you know that the person ahead of you, who may have all kinds of problems, I died for them. And I'm like, ooh, you died for them? Yeah. And here you are treating them because they're an inconvenience for you. You've decided that you need to get someplace real quick, and they're in your way. And yet I died for them. See, this is how deceptive this whole thing is. So just a couple of final words on Ukraine. What do you think really happened there? Now, I'm not saying Putin's a good guy, but it's coming out. In fact, our government's admitted that we funded biolabs there to create bioweapons. Now they'll say, oh no, it's not bioweapons. Well, why would you create viruses that would kill people there? Why would you do that? And those viruses that were created are DNA targeting the Russians. They're based upon Russian DNA, just like the one in China actually was based upon the DNA of the Chinese. That's why it wiped out so many more Chinese than it did here. So we got to open our eyes. We got to see that we're being manipulated by the evil one. And that's what my goal is, okay, is to open up eyes. It isn't to change political ideologies or any of that kind of crap, okay, because it's crap. It's all passing away. It's to open up eyes to see so that they can see the truth, who is Jesus. That's what it's about. So, if you have any questions or you want to discuss this further, okay, on Facebook, you can find me there. You can find me also on Instagram, and I'm on WhatsApp, and I'll talk with you. I'll share things with you. I've got people I do that with. Have a lot of questions, and I don't come out and say, oh, you're not saying things right. I want to hear what they say. See, I want to know how they see things. I don't necessarily want to beat them over the head with the gospel, beat them over the head with my ideations, my ideologies. I want to learn from them. So, if you're interested in that, again, my email address that you can contact me at is Phil, P-H-I-L, again, that's P-H-I-L, Hesch, H-E-S-C-H, H-E-S-C-H at yahoo.com. Until we talk again, my prayer always is for you that your day would be blessed and that your eyes would be opened up to the glory of God all around you, that you just don't see because you're looking at these things categorically. Until then, blessings to everyone on the other side of the screen.